Hey, Cowboy, we're not even.
We're live.
Put
We're live.
Put us on the screen. It's a blank
That's weird.
screen.
There we go.
Jeez Louise. Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, folks. It is the one and only the notorious V, the Guerrilla, coming to you live on this edition of Rogue News ESW. Rogue News ESW. You can find us over at Twitter, x.com, which is at ESW Rogue News, at ESW Rogue News, as well as roguenews.com, which is all going to get revamped because our app is getting closer. It is the month of August, and as we get to the end, our full-on iOS and Android app will be out, and it's going to be pretty darn exciting. I want to thank our two gentlemen that are here. Cowboy working the airways, making sure the broadcast is coming out crispy and clean, and we have our special guest, Ben Kelleran. Ben is he's an energy trading maverick. He's got some really good, deep geopolitical insights. Energy markets and what's happening in the energy sector affects a great deal of everything we do. Petroleum and hydrocarbons are the lifeblood of any real economy, and what occurs there affects the geopolitical, geostrategic, and the geoeconomic board in such a major way. With that being said, morning, Cowboy, Ben, how are you guys?
Doing
pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure. It's been yeah. It's great to have you back, Ben. It's been a while. I mean, we just started firing up 2 weeks ago, get the show back on the road, get the gang back together, and so now we're on to new horizons here, Ben. We're on to new horizons. For those that don't know you, Ben, why don't you do a quick intro, a little background, little cliff notes of who you are and what your background is, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I guess in 2020, made it out of college, got into public accounting, and did my prison sentence there, as I like to call it. But after a couple of years in public accounting, I got out and started writing about investments, and kind of into 2022, let's say, I started to kind of focus into the commodity sector, because that's where I think a lot of the opportunities are. I think we're kind of in a kind of long-term 10 to 15 year commodity cycle. And I think where we're at right now is kind of right before the second wave of that move. But the path that kind of took me there was writing, started a Substack a couple of years ago, started a podcast to go with it. I've had Velez on my show. What was it, like in April? But definitely, I think about due to have him back, because lots been happening over the last several months. But basically started the Substack, started focusing on investments, commodities, different equities that I think are unique or attractive, and kind of special situation type deals. And yeah, basically anything that looks interesting or has, I think, asymmetric upside. And I think there's a lot of that in the commodity space right now.
And real briefly, for those of you who want to find Ben's work, look at the link in the description. I've got Substack and X links in there. Give him a follow, because if I want to know anything about energy, I just look up his profile.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's I do have an oil expert, someone who's probably forgotten more about the oil industry than most generalists will ever learn, on my podcast later today, so that'll be up tomorrow. But definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on in the energy markets, and I think people are getting too caught up in the short term as far as what's going to happen over the next month or two, or even the next 6 months, and missing what's coming over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Speaking of what's coming down for the next 3 to 5 years, we're seeing an entire geopolitical unraveling, a reordering, as if you will. And we're seeing what began as Bretton Woods coming apart. What's began as the petrodollar scheme starting to fissure. And we're seeing a multipolar world. We're seeing trade groups and trading blocks appearing all throughout the planet, where countries are choosing to align with each other and utilizing their own currencies or commodities to trade one toward another, bypassing the dollar. Ben, how do you see all this stuff happening right now from yours? You're on the front lines of this stuff. What do you see, and what's your best synopsis on everything that's happening?
That's probably like a 3 hour conversation, but
let's get into it, brother.
Yeah, we can get into it a little bit. I guess the high level view that I have is that I think the next 5 maybe 10 years are going to be, I think, a madhouse is the short version, geopolitically. And I think if you look at it and kind of divvy up the different factions, the odd man out at the table is Europe, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the Middle East will come through it fine. And you kind of have the Saudis and the Iranians and our favorite friends of the U.S. in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah. We love those guys.
I think when you kind of look at it, you've got China that's going to be the dominant regional power in Asia. You've got the U.S. that's going to, I think, not own, but effectively influence both Americas. And then I think Europe is going to get carved up. I think the euro is this is where I go down the rabbit hole a little bit, and some of my more traditional finance friends think I'm nuts, but I think the euro is basically going to zero.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, as far as what that has to do with energy, I think the biggest thing that people are missing is that the long-term investment cycle where we're at right now, like $65, $70 a barrel, is not enough to incentivize enough new production to kind of keep oil prices in check, in my opinion.
And I have somebody here who begs to differ on the euro, though. You want to hear from him?
Yeah, who's that?
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Macron, and my wife is really a wife. She is female. I swear we did not push the plastic surgeon out of the window. And I can tell you that the euro is going to rule it all. You need to relax. Okay, I don't agree with you, and I think you are insane. This is all I have to say. Vive la France.
I mean, the border is the euro will go to zero.
Yes. And the Germans will not be cleaning the toilets. Mark Schmel.
I mean, it's interesting when you talk about Europe, man, because Europe has. Look, here's what's funny, right? We've had the old globalist, guard, so to speak. These are the elite banking families, private equity that's been running Europe for the longest time. These are the Malthusians. These are the Hegelians, so to speak. And these guys have swallowed the suicide pill of neo-feudalism. And I think what's happening to Europe and where Europe is heading is a fate far worse than the Soviet Union. I think it's terrible, man. And I agree with you. I think we're seeing the world being reordered into regional powers. Russia dominating Eurasia, China dominating Asia. The United States will control the Western Hemisphere. It's a complete realignment towards that. And then you got a few wild cards. How will Oceania go? How much longer will the City of London Corporation's tentacles sink into Australia, New Zealand, and Tasmania, as well as the rest of what's left of the Commonwealth, quote unquote? It's interesting to see all of this, man. And I think he who has the best energy strategy is the one that's going to win. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think you look at what China's doing right now. They basically have their oil inventories at all-time highs, meaning they think oil at 60, 65 was a bargain. If you look at, I had a buddy send me some charts of what Chinese oil inventories have done over the last couple months, and it's basically a 45-degree angle. I'm not sure if they're completely full, but basically their equivalent SPR is in a very different situation than ours is right now.
Sure.
And you kind of look at it, and that's where they're actually, as far as oil production goes, like they're kind of the weak player, where the only people in a worse position as far as energy security is Europe, because they're actually willing to address their kind of energy deficit, whereas Europe wants to power everything on windmills and offshore wind, which is going to be like we'll look back on that in 10 or 20 years as just the most insane scam on a societal level as far as energy production. But I think when you kind of look at it, the US and North America is in a very good spot with what we have for oil, natural gas, coal, uranium. I mean, you name it, North America has it. The Middle East is going to be fine because they have plenty of oil. I will say that some of their oil fields have been online for a very, very long time. Not that they're going to run out or anything, but I think the idea that they have, I think the number that gets tossed around is like, oh, OPEC has 5 million barrels to spare capacity.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that high. It's 2 to 3 is my guess, but you kind of look at some of these different regions, and I think that's going to be like the U.S. has mismanaged the whole country infrastructure, all these different things for decades. But that's going to be, I think, the thing that the country can fall back on is, hey, we have the world reserve currency. We've got plenty of energy. And I don't think the dollar is going anywhere. I think there's going to be a bunch of things that maybe change, whether it's the talk about stable coins, talk about what they're doing with the treasury, what they're doing with gold, all these different things. There's going to be a lot of changes, but I think the U.S. will come through it. I think it's all a relative game, right? So you kind of look at who is in the least crappy position. I think that is pretty much the U.S. So
yeah, we're the cleanest, dirtiest shirt in the playground, right?
Yep,
we're the cleanest, dirty shirt in the playground, and I think we have something that that Europe doesn't. We don't have this. Europe is gone. I think politically they are just gone. I think there's no way the people of the EU are going to vote themselves out of where they're at. They're doomed.
Blasphemy.
But I think also for America, Americans have a wherewithal to stay on top. There is that maverick spirit that Americans have. They're like, dude, we're not going to go out into the good night saying, hold the fort. That's not our way. That's not our strategy. That's not our culture. We're a culture of rebels. So at some point, it's like, irrespective of how much, globalist bootlickers are still running around DC, you have to do something, especially when you have, this global reordering with rising powers, China, Russia, and so on and so forth. And even in the Middle East, you got Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. These are the powerful players that are emerging. And I agree with you. I think the dollar's not going anywhere. I think there's going to be something new to it. And I don't think it's going to be world reserve anymore. But I do think there will be something for international trade settlement that will settle very quickly, very fast, much faster than we have going with SWIFT. In regards to what some of the trading I guess you would want to call them concepts that the BRICS are kind of throwing around and whatnot. So it's definitely going to be interesting, man, for sure.
I happen to like the taste of jack boots when I lick them, especially when they are made from the skin of Ukrainian children.
Very good, Cowboy. Very good.
Bringing his A game today.
He is. He's in rare form this morning. I'm kind of worried here. But shifting gears, Ben, what do you think is happening with the Middle East? Now, Americans have finally woken up to the reality that there's this little strip of a country there in the Middle East that is not our friend, bro. Really has no interest with us. I've been siphoning off the teat of America for so long. How do you think that's going to play, especially now the atrocities that we're hearing coming out of Gaza? I mean, some initial reports of over 300,000 dead. That's the images that are coming out. You can't hide it. It's looking bad. Like, what do you think is happening there right now in the Middle East and the power structure as it's unraveling and shifting?
Well, I was told they were our greatest ally, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Yeah, they are our greatest ally.
The thing that's interesting with the Middle East and all these different narratives have been built up really post World War II is you have different kind of faith based ideas that have been built up ever since the 1940s, where it's like, all people are created equal. Israel's our greatest ally. All these different events that happened a certain way. The West, like everyone has to have democracy, all these different ideas. I think we're starting to see some of those ideas shift and change very quickly. And I think what is going to happen in the Middle East is, I know some people are calling for like the end of Israel as a nation in the next 3 to 5 years. I think it probably takes longer than that. But I think what they're kind of doing right now is definitely a big part in why they're losing support around the world. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next, say, 10 to 20 years, Israel's no longer a nation state. But as far as their influence over U.S. politics and will we keep sending money? Like, I mean, you look at the whole Epstein thing and all this other, all the other stuff that's gone on there, and it's hard to see how that is going to change unless we get a dramatic change in our political leadership class.
Yeah. Well, would you argue that even the fact that we're allowed to talk about it without being canceled is a dramatic change?
Well, I think part of it is once that cat is out of the bag, right, you basically can't go back. And I think there's ever since was the October 7th stuff and Elon buying Twitter, I think was a big part of it too. But once you kind of open Pandora's box, there's no return journey on that. And so, right, are they going to like cancel half the people talking about it? Like I was listening to, what was it, Macro Voices last week, which is the most like white bread financial markets and commodities podcast out there. And they mentioned the Epstein thing. So they're going to cancel all these people that are like working at big banks and working at high level institutions for talking about it? I don't think so. But is it annoying to see people that have been covering this for several years, just like they're covering the COVID and clot shots and all this other stuff for the last 5 years? Is it annoying to see like everyone else showing up to the party late? Like, yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, I mean, with the question of Israel, though, I wonder how many people who are covering it are really linking Epstein to Israel, right? Like, I think Epstein is, for a lot of us who have any idea of what's going on, I don't think he's Mossad, but I'm wondering how many of your sort of, white bread, like you said, born again Christians, where in order to get hurricane relief in Texas, you have to swear fealty to Israel, kind of thing. Like, are those people
to Israel?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Texas to get rid of Greg Abbott. Like, at least get a guy who can walk. Like, let's go. Yeah. But the thing on that I think is interesting is that goes back to the generational shift I think is happening, where younger generations, left or right, and you can guess which side of the spectrum I'm on that side, but the both sides are not interested in being Israel's lapdog to go fight Iran, to go cover up whatever Epstein's doing. I think a lot of people are realizing that even if they can't connect the dots to Mossad, I think the idea that Epstein had high connections in U.S. government is obvious even to the so-called normies, right? And I think that's where you're going to see these changes continue to accelerate, where I can't remember what the term for it is called, but once I think it's like 13 or 15% of the population knows or understands a certain topic, then it starts to spread like wildfire. So I think that's where you kind of hit the escape velocity on some of these things where, I mean, people can argue, is he Mossad or MI6 or CIA or all the above? But I think the idea that this is just a one-off and it all died with Epstein, I think most people look at that and realize that's just not the case.
Yeah, I agree. Anybody who thinks that this started and ended with Jeffrey and Ghislaine, you're clearly mistaken. There's just no way. This is a huge operation, and I think it's like more than anything else. I forgot who the guy is. He's a former CIA analyst, John Kuriakos or something like that. He is he's making his rounds on podcasting right now as a former CIA analyst.
Was he on Tucker a while back?
Yeah, and he's like, no,
Kiriakou or something.
Yeah, Kiriakou
like
or something like that. Yeah. And he's like, no, he's like Epstein's total Mossad. He's not some sort of free agent. It kind of absolves. They're trying to lessen the blow, right? Like, what guy do you know? Like, you go, you throw a ball. You have all these guys who are all linked to Israel. They all got this, the last names that are associated with a religious group, but they're not. But they're freelancers. No, they serve one interest, and that interest is that small strip of land in the Middle East and the Levant. That's who the problem is. And for anybody to think otherwise, it's like it's deflection in varying degrees.
Well, I think too,
the-
if you get into it, it's not that hard to connect the dots to Maxwell's father and who he worked for and all these different people, right? So that's the biggest thing, that it's not that difficult to connect the dots to some very prominent people in high up places for Mossad and other intelligence agencies, right? So I think that's the thing with the geopolitical stuff and all these different topics. They're a lot more open to discussion than they were maybe like even 3 or 4 years ago. And I think that's where I've started to kind of realize this. If you're paying attention to financial markets and you're not paying attention to geopolitics, you're missing a big puzzle piece. And if you're just paying attention to geopolitics and not paying attention to financial markets, like I don't think people realize how important the financial markets are in this whole like geopolitical chessboard, whatever you want to call it, where you've got a bunch of people talking about bonds and interest rates and currencies, and it seems like very complicated, but it's basically just another theater of war is kind of the way a lot of people, at least the way I've kind of started to look at it, where you have these different countries and different factions that are all fighting for power and control and influence. And you definitely see it showing up in financial markets. And it takes a while to get the hang of like paying attention to all this stuff, but I think is going to become very obvious over the next handful of years that we might not get like millions of units on the ground, millions of infantry fighting in conflicts in like a war of that scale, but there's going to be other forms of maybe less direct conflict that happens in the next several years.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think we're on the precipice of so many different conflicts. Shifting gears to Eurasia, Ukraine, the whole Russia fiasco. How do you see that playing out right now? Russia's basically in dust-up mode, just finishing off what's left of the Nazi regime of Zelensky. What's your take on what's occurring there?
I think it would be, in an ideal world, it would be wrapped up tomorrow, but that's probably not going to happen because I don't see any reason that the Russians will believe what the West is going to sell them as far as like, truce or peace deal, whatever you want to call it. And I think they're content to basically keep grinding away and see where that takes them, because they know that the West doesn't have the troops or the military equipment to basically extend it. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch, but I don't know. Like there was the 50-day or whatever Trump deadline that he throws out and is going to get changed in like a week. But I've really tried to stop paying attention to those just because it's like tariff headlines where it's going to change tomorrow anyway. So, but with the Russia-Ukraine thing, I'm not sure. It should end soon. I think there eventually becomes a tipping point where Ukraine doesn't have the manpower or the material to keep it going. I don't know when that point is. Like there are other people.
I mean, they're running out of. I mean, they ran out of young men, right? They ran out of old men. They are right now running out of people with Down syndrome to throw in the front lines. I don't know what's left for Ukraine at this point. Children? Well, they've done that as well. 16 years old and 16 on up, and now they're going to have 10-year-olds in the front line. The way things are going.
I mean, I think there was a mass protest at one of their quote unquote recoupment centers, where the people actually are willing to come out and force, because, I've seen enough videos of them taking guys off the street and, kids, not kids, but, basically kids' mothers, like saying, no, don't take them. And that's only going to go on for so long. And it seems like that's already ended. And now the money and supplies are being cut short. And so Even Europe rescinded, I think, 1.7 billion in aid to them. I mean, what are they going to do with no money and no weapons and no men?
Yeah, exactly correct. The other thing also, gentlemen, is shifting gears here, energy. We know right now there's a whole new industry that's coming up, and we're all on the quote unquote AI race, AI in the future. Ben, what's your take on this? Like, I have, yeah, I look at AI as a mixed bag. I think the majority of it is vaporware. I think there's also some real AI stuff, but I don't think it's this Hollywoodized version that people have colloquially within their brains. Man, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is like a tough conversation because I look at it and it's a very nuanced thing where is it going to be actual, was it AGI is the term, like general intelligence?
Yeah,
I have a basic like philosophical kind of view on that I don't think man is going to be able to put like the spark of life or a consciousness or whatever you want to call it into a machine where it's going to be a living thing.
correct.
And could it be something that processes a ton of code and is able to mimic human mind, like a human brain?
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
But I don't see how it's going to turn into some like new species or whatever you want to call it, right? And I think what it is going to replace is going to be like the adult daycare jobs, the white collar office work, where it's just, okay, you send a bunch of emails all day and you're like working HR, harassing the people that do the actual work. It's like, well, you can definitely have a line of code do that same job, right? So I think there is going to be a good chunk of the adult daycare make work jobs that get wiped out in the next handful of years.
Yeah, I think other professions that are going to be affected would be lawyers. Lawyers. There's nothing those assholes can do that a smart contract backed by AI can't deliver much quicker, faster, and cheaper.
Lawyers, accountants, insurance people, actuaries, like that's all.
Yeah,
Number crunching.
whole industries are getting replaced for sure by this advanced machine learning.
Bankers.
Now here's
I
the
think
kick.
the one thing that I'll add to like the lawyers, accountants, all that stuff is I'm not sure until you get like figure out the hallucination side where and we can maybe talk about this later, but there was like one of my favorite investments is like California oil company. There was a guy who sent me an like an AI hallucination of a legal case that didn't exist, and it was citing a piece that I wrote, and it said nothing about the lawsuit. So like until you fix the hallucination thing, it's gonna be there's gonna be some breaks on it. But if there's someone that figures that out, then I think that'll accelerate. And as far as the like all this stuff is moving so fast, so I'm sure it'll change in the next month or 2 months, but it's hard for me to see how you're not at least going to have people that need to check, basically do the homework check on whatever AI is putting out, at least for now.
Yeah. The energy requirements, right? We know the limitations that we have with in terms of computational capability and power. And it seems like the Chinese are doing a lot more with less in terms of computing power. When it comes to AI, we've seen it with DeepSeek. They just launched a new one called Kim, or something like that. Versus what they're projecting here, and I think a lot of these AI companies and data centers, I think it's just another boondoggle cash grab. Oh, we need it, 60 gigawatts. Kind of like talking about the doc from Back to the Future, right? We need 60 gigawatts of electricity in order to power this data center, and what's it really doing besides surveillance and God knows what else,
Yeah, I guess the detour a little bit into the real estate side. I was talking to there's a guy at my gym who does commercial real estate. is very successful from what I've heard. He basically laid it out. I think this was maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, where things are right now. If you want to make a fortune, you're looking at office real estate, and obviously you have to be picky there. If you want to stay wealthy, you're looking at multifamily, like apartment buildings, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if you want to lose your ass, you're looking at data centers and anything in that area, right?
Yes.
And I think when you look at like basically just capital cycle, and you look at, okay, where's all the investment going? Where's all the money flowing to? Do you really want to be the like last person on that ride? Like you kind of, it's very simple when you kind of pull up the, here, I'll actually share my screen here so you guys can see it. But this is basically I think one of the most important charts in the way markets work. If you guys can throw that out for me.
Yeah.
It basically will tell you everything you need to know about where are you for a certain industry in the capital cycle. And right, everyone's optimistic about AI, all these different ideas about like what's NVIDIA's market cap right now? Like 4 trillion or something stupid.
It's stupid.
It's like
NVIDIA is more valuable than ExxonMobil. I mean, this is the delusion of financialization.
4.3 trillion. I
It's
just pulled it up.
stupid.
And it's one of those things where, okay, this goes back to what I've said before about bubbles, and that they basically will create anti-bubbles. And it's pretty obvious to anyone paying attention that the AI and the spend and all the investment there is unsustainable. But if it turns out to be something that wants to, that we want to pursue as far as like, okay, this is the next big technology, it's going to benefit a lot of the energy side of things, where that's the real constraint, where you kind of look at the capital cycle and say, okay, if I invest in this bottleneck, which is going to be energy production or steel or whatever else, like real physical goods that make all the stuff possible, that's, I think, going to be a good place to, I think, protect your wealth. So the way I kind of look at it is there may be beneficiaries, but is it going to be like, oh, I want to buy the hot semiconductor company, or like all these chip manufacturers? Like, I don't know, man. That's just too hard for me. That goes in the too hard pile. So
You're gonna picks and shovels to the gold rush then?
yeah, I mean, the problem is like there's so many things that change so fast in the tech industry, where I just kind of look at it as, okay, if bubbles create anti-bubbles, and this is where I go back to oil and being, I think, maybe like the second most asymmetric physical commodity out there over like a 3 to 5 year time frame. Like if you go back and look at CapEx and what people spend to explore for oil, right? All this stuff for developing, producing all this other stuff, our inflation adjusted CapEx in 2024 was the lowest it's been since World War II.
Yeah.
So for 80 plus years, right, we basically have never spent less on exploration and production. And 2025 is probably not going to be much different, with the average price of, call it 70, give or take. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see where, okay, if your high level view is that bubbles create anti-bubbles, then you probably want to be invested in the anti-bubble side of things. And that's commodities, precious metals, companies that produce those things. That can be a minefield, though. I mean, there's issues that go along with any strategy, obviously. But I think where we're headed is going to be, like, it's going to catch a lot of people off guard. But that's why it typically works well, is if you're investing in something that's out of favor and you're right, that's typically where the outsized returns can come from.
Yeah. Good way of putting that, for sure. How do you think things are going to play out, man? What's your grasp on your radar screen for the next let's say 3 to 5 years? How things are going to happen here in the United States, and what we're going to be dealing with?
Yeah, I would say I think the political side is going to be interesting. I'm not all that optimistic about Trump making some big changes or holding
same.
people accountable.
Yeah.
I think
that ship has sailed.
I think that's what has people real worked up over the whole Epstein thing, is that I don't think people are all that upset about, okay, the Epstein files and all this other stuff. Like, they have handled it better as far as like what they were advertising they're going to do. Obviously, I think people just wanted basically some heads to roll. Like, I think that's the big picture thing, is everyone knows that our political class is not ruling in the best interest of the country. And if they're not going to be held responsible for even something as heinous as this, then is there going to be anything that like they can be held responsible for? Doesn't seem like it.
No.
So,
and again, I think it was that kid from Breaking Points or whatnot. I forgot what his name was. Tucker interviewed him, the Indian guy. He said it best. He goes, "This whole Epstein thing shows that the system will go above and beyond to protect you."
Yeah, I think that's what has people, I think, really worked up, is that if we had a functioning society, like, all these people would be strung up from lampposts or whatever your favorite form of capital punishment is, right? And I think that's where unless we change that, I think long term, like, and this is not 5 years, this is like 20, 30 years plus. My view is that we eventually head towards a monarchy. I know that's another opinion I have, that my
That's interesting. Why do you say that?
I think it basically just has to do with human nature and the way humans are wired, where it basically, if you look on a long enough time frame, the traditional ruling structure for basically every society is you have one big man, one head honcho, whatever you want to call it, a king, an emperor, whatever, in charge. And then you have the hierarchy, like organization structure beneath him. And if you get a tyrant, they don't last very long. And the king is basically responsible for him, his line, but also it lines up his interests with the interests of the people, where that's the biggest thing that we don't have right now in the US, is that our government clearly does not rule with the best interests of the people or the country in mind. Right. And that's how we end up with forever wars. That's how we end up with the cocaine import agency, all these different things, where it's like, okay, if we were doing what was smart or intelligent, like best for the country, we wouldn't be focused on the Middle East. We'd be focused on the cartels and the fentanyl coming across the border. And we'd be focused on illegal immigration. And we'd be focused on deporting 80 to 100 million people. And, well, if we're not doing that, then you kind of look at it and say, okay, these people just want basically to import a bunch of third world people for cheap labor, and that suppresses the wages of local people. It drives up real estate prices. It creates all these other distortions. And I think if you had what we had maybe 50, 60 years ago, you could maybe argue that, okay, a democratic republic works, but I don't think you can fix that if you don't have a homogenous, high trust society.
Bingo.
So I think that's why we're headed back towards a strong man or a monarchy or whatever you want to call it.
Or almost like an autocratic type of role. You know?
I think it's going to be right wing Caesar type.
Yeah, I
figure.
think so too. It's the only way to survive. It's like, when the whole story goes of the woman standing outside when the founding fathers were debating the Declaration of or debating the Constitution, so to speak. And this woman asked Benjamin Franklin, "Well, what government do we have?" The story goes, and Franklin looked at her and said, "It's a republic, if you can keep it." And what most people forget to say or mention is the other half of that statement, right? He said, "It's a republic if you can keep it, and it's for a morally upright and vigilant citizenry." We don't have that anymore. Right?
We've got a banana republic if you can keep it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a banana republic if you can keep it.
We're going to keep that. I think the generational shift is something that's getting more airtime, that I think is going to become pretty obvious, whether it's in real estate or some of these other markets, but also in the attitudes of the people. And there's I'm sure you guys are familiar with Neil Howe and the Fourth Turning and all this other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny because he will do podcast appearances and then bitch and moan about younger generations not supporting democracy anymore. And it's like, well, if you grew up when I did and you're basically, the whole system is designed to discriminate against you, whether it's getting into business school or getting a job or getting a promotion, and then you're going to expect me to support democracy, which this goes back to what other smarter people than me have said. Like the purpose of a system is what it does, right? And it's basically, if you're going to have democracy turn into rule by old people, retards, pedophiles, minorities, like if that's what democracy is, then yeah, I don't want any of that at all. Yeah. Right? So that's where you kind of get into this dilemma of, okay, what comes next? My view is that it's going to be something where you find the cult of personality, the guy who really doesn't want the position, but ends up, that's like kind of a destiny argument, but someone who doesn't want it, but ends up like being forced into it. And that's like the leadership figure that I think will hopefully bring about like an American revival over the next 20, 30 years, but it might take longer than that. We might need to get a full collapse, but
I think the collapse, a lot of people, I've said this before in the past, people are like, oh, the collapse of the United States. I said, look, man, the economic collapse of the United States is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's necessary. The people don't understand. Like when you start, like guys like all three of us, we follow the money. We look at all the charts. We look at the technicals. We look at like the underlying debt. We look at all the shit and metrics that a lot of these guys who are quote unquote experts miss. They miss it because they look at everything myopically. They're staring at the tree by missing the whole freaking forest, right? We're looking at subsections of the economy and like, okay, how does this subsection affect this? Because we understand that all of this is daisy chained. We understand that all of this is linked. We understand that one part of the economy falters. It has an effect, a systemic effect on all things. And we also understand that geopolitics is also a driver to this. And geoeconomics is also a driver to this. There's so many factors that guys like you and me and Cowboy that we factor in that is missed by so-called experts, and they're wrong every single time. They look at guys like us like, hey, how'd you guys know this? Because we know how to read the tea leaves, man. We know how to read the tea leaves. And here's the thing. I agree with you totally, bro. The collapse needs to occur because Americans need to wake up. They need to wake up. And maybe it's $15 a bag for potato chips and $20 for bread or $50 for gas. I don't know what that looks like, right? But Americans need to wake up. But we need to understand there's certain aspects, and I love the Constitution, don't get me wrong, but there are certain aspects to it that in order for us to compete, globally, there needs to be some changes that makes us leaner, meaner, and faster to turn on the pivot. We are an overbloated, disgusting pustule of a government that leads us. We're literally spinning on a solid piece of rock, ruled by pedophiles, paying taxes to Satanists. That's exactly where we are right now.
Yeah, it goes back to the meme. But I think the wake-up call, I think, might be what is going to happen in financial markets, and that's why all this stuff ties into geopolitics, I think, is my view is that I think we're at some point in the next, call it 18 months, by the end of 2026, I think we're probably going to go past $100 a barrel on oil, and that'll be the last time we ever see oil in the double digits. And I think when that happens, you're going to start to see, like, we're eventually going to all-time highs. And when that happens, you're going to see, depending on where you are, like $5, $6, $7 gasoline, all these different things where people are going to say, hey, like, what are we doing? What's going on here? Right? Because gasoline flows through, I guess diesel flows through to other supply chains. And it basically, I think inflation is going to probably make what happened in 2021, 2022, basically just look like the teaser trailer for what's coming.
Yeah, although when oil does get above a certain level, it'll be profitable for even people in the U.S. to produce it. So there will be kind of like the commodity cycle, like you talk about. It'll be development on the back end for people who are willing to do hard work. think we just haven't had enough time starving for young people in this country to want to do hard work.
Well, that's the thing is there's high prices cure high prices, and so it's not going to be like a permanent. Oh, we're going to 200 or 300 a barrel and staying there indefinitely. Like there's going to be a pullback, all this other stuff as new capacity comes online. But I think as far as actually being able to meet, like I think there's another chart that I just saw the other day that we passed like 104 million barrels a day of oil demand, and that's like another record, even though the IEA has been predicting peak oil demand for the past like 15 years, and they keep kicking it out like another 5 years. But point is, like, they'll have peak oil demand, and then we'll just keep going up 1% a year, give or take, and then there'll be like the Bloomberg article or all these other Euro trash rags that basically will say oil demand growth is weak. It's like, well, if we aren't going to produce anymore, demand keeps going up. Like eventually the price is going to reflect that. But I think there's a ton of like paper market manipulation in there too, where you see some stuff going on that is not organic price action, organic price discovery. But
yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's like you're man, when countries begin to play the financialization game, these are just some of the things that occur. Their price discovery goes out the window. The underlying asset the value of what the underlying asset is so far removed out into some sort of artificial reality. It's amazing where Western economies are. They cannot. It's like people. The G7. I've been calling the G7 the I7, the insolvent 7 for years now.
Well, that's what creates the booms and busts, right?
Yeah.
That's because the market's like the people. I mean, the investors that are looking for value and trying to make rational decisions, the market is going to try to drive prices towards fair value, or at least that's what they're designed to do. But when you have these distortions, it can get so far out of whack where it just gets insane, where you've got like, okay, silver at 30, like in April or whatever, 28, whatever the bottom was, that doesn't make a ton of sense. I think silver is going way higher over the next several years. I think platinum is like the people that when you talk about precious metals, like, oh, you own physical gold and silver, like you're a nut or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you tell them you own platinum, like they'll look at you like, what is that? They won't even know what it is.
They have no idea. And here's
my
the thing,
view is platinum is going like 8 to 10,000 an ounce
easily
in this cycle.
Easily. And dude, since I came on the scene, when I first stepped on the scene, the economists were petrified. But anyway, when I first stepped on the scene back in 2012, I remember writing an article called Pallas Athena. And I was trying to, and the article is based because, Pallas Athena means platinum, right? That's the Pallas family of metals, platinum, palladium, rhodium, right? And I was detailing how valuable platinum would be. And this is when platinum was, $300 to $600 an ounce, around there, right? It was less than gold. I think it was like maybe 1,100. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But anyway, if you want to do actual real fusion reaction, one of the most key metals in order to make that happen, because it has the crystal lattice structures in order to do so, is platinum. Platinum is super limited.
I didn't realize that. Is that just platinum of all the PGMs, or is it every PGM?
It's platinum has the most of the crystal lattice, but you could also do it, but you'd have to use more rhodium and more palladium. You can get there as well, right?
Interesting.
But here's the other kicker. All the platinum families of metals are extremely rare, extremely limited. And the reason for that, they're not of this world. They got here through meteor strikes, right? They're alien, so to speak, right? And the thing with platinum, it's a very thinly traded metal. I remember so vividly, I think it was October or November of 2012. I moved a fifth of the world's platinum by myself with one single, physical brokering deal that I did, right? 1/6 of the entire world's platinum. That's how thinly traded platinum is. And I agree with you, Ben. Platinum's future, $7,000, $8,000, huge. And no one's even looking at it because I'm like, oh my God, $3,000 an ounce gold. Yeah, it's great. Oh my God, $38 an ounce silver. Oh my God, it's fantastic. But platinum is a sleeping giant. So is palladium. So is rhodium. Go ahead, buddy.
Here's the visualization for anyone that doesn't believe you on the scarcity thing. If you take all the world's gold that's been mined and you basically get it all together in one room, you could fill up, I think, 3 Olympic swimming pools is what I've heard on that. If you found and collected all the world's platinum, you could fill up 1 Olympic swimming pool to your ankles.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's, I think, 30 times more scarce. I've heard 25 to 30 times. And it's trading at a decent discount to gold right now. And yes, it has run a lot since April. But I think when you look at the inventories, like they basically have, I think it's 2 years left of inventories above ground, and there's like a 1 million ounce deficit. So you have like 2 million ounces above ground inventories. So in the next 18 months, you're gonna see I think the market start to price that in, where you're not just going to 1,500 or 2,000 an ounce and stopping. And I think when that happens, you're looking at 2,500, 3,000, and that might turn out to be conservative, but all these different things, when you look at it, I think it's a lot like the uranium trade when uranium was $20 or $30 a pound, like several years ago, where the inventories are weighing on the price, but the inventories are going to be gone if you're patient enough. If you have a 3 to 5 year time frame, I think platinum, if you're just like looking to buy something physical where you're basically removing money from the financial system, not buying stocks or bonds or anything else, I think platinum is probably one of the most asymmetric trades out there. Like gold's going to do great. Silver's going to do awesome. Like all these other things are going to do well. I think everyone should have bits of silver, gold, and platinum. But if I was buying today, I think it'd be hard to find a better risk reward as far as physical metals outside of platinum. So
absolutely. Very well said. Ben, we have the last few minutes left. Anything else you want to touch base upon? Anything else you want to bring to the audience's attention, and anything else that's on your radar screen?
I mean, I have a whole bunch of stuff on my radar screen. I guess the big investment that I've been following nonstop, like a full-time job, that I guess I'll mention, throw out there if anyone's interested.
Yeah, throw it out there, bro.
Sable Offshore. So it's the California oil company that has been just a complete pile of brain damage for last year. But I think when they get it up and running, it's going to be the closest thing to Saudi economics in the US. And I think they're pretty close to doing that. So obviously go into it in more detail on the Substack and all the stuff there. But basically, we're talking like lifting costs below $10 a barrel, like 50, 60, 70 years of reserves. I think they have, my guess is they've got like 1 billion barrels or more of recoverable reserves. I think they said, was it 14 or 15 billion barrels in place? And this is not some like massive market cap company either. It's like I think it's like 3 billion right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, somewhere in there. And so like the reason it's been held up is in California. There's been legal complications, all this other stuff. I talk about that obviously in depth on the Substack where it's like following it. But I think it's going to be fully operational here in the near future, like where it's like, okay, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but sometime in August. And when that happens, you see the market start to price it in. I think it's going to be, I think there's some fireworks that are going to happen while what kind of plays out. So that's the last little bit. If you guys are looking for the hot stock tip or whatever, I try to avoid doing that, but I couldn't help myself on this one. Definitely worth a look. So
what's your time horizon on that one?
I think it's something, my view is that you could basically coffee can it, hold it forever. I think they're planning to pay out some pretty chunky dividends in the next 12 months, like after operations. I think they're basically shooting for a $4 annual dividend. Stock is at just under 30 right now, which is a pretty chunky yield. But I think if you're a shorter term trader, if you kind of dig into the legal side and assume that the legal approvals are coming, it's going to be fully operational. I think anywhere on a time frame longer than like 1 month to 5 years is like the way I kind of look at it. I think it's going significantly higher. So,
well, I think you told us about it quite some time ago. And, I of course, I know you don't give any investment advice, but I relayed one of the shows you and I privately did to some of my buddies, and they're pretty happy with it right now. I think they got in under, I don't even know what price they got in, but it was a lot lower than it is today. So it's really done well.
In the April flush, it got down to like 16, 17. I'm like, makes no sense. But the upside, I think, is pretty interesting when you kind of factor in, okay, what's the valuation? How much cash are they going to produce? What kind of dividends is it going to pay? All these different things where I think that's another thing that I think is going to come back, just to detour back to our conversation. I think a lot of investors are going to go back to focusing on how much income does an asset produce, whether that's dividends or rent or whatever, versus like the capital appreciation side. So I think that's another change that I think we could see in the next handful of years.
So that's awesome. Yeah, I think I want to say we talked about this last year, over a year ago, or around a year ago. And it was before it got some sort of approval. So it was like below $17. So definitely, obviously a good move in that regard. So we'll be looking to, I'll be watching it. I'm not one to watch stocks like that. If I were to have that, I think personally for my own way of doing things, it'd be a coffee can situation, but definitely with you on a commodity super cycle. I know Vive talked quite a bit about maybe the next financial system having a commodities sort of base to it. Are you still of that opinion?
Yeah, 100%. It has to go to some sort of reality. Like one of the things that, you, myself, Ben, we've been talking about, I think we have it in our heads. We have it in our ideas in the forefront of our brains. The current system that's working here in the United States just doesn't work financially or politically. With the realignment towards a more autocratic, more of a strongman rule, where things are actually getting done and getting done very quickly, very, very efficiently, I think you have to have an economy based on some sort of reality. The whole central banking experiment, the way it's been running roughshod since the end of since the start of Bretton Woods all the way till Kissinger in 71 and whatnot with the petrodollar, the entire central banking concept is an abject failure. And we can't keep financializing this. This is why we have stupid ass billionaires like Bezos, who they don't do shit for anybody else, right? These are guys who don't build anything. They run companies like Amazon. The first 15 years, it wasn't until the last 4 or 5 years that Amazon finally started taking a profit. I mean,
didn't his grandpa work for DARPA too?
Yeah, 100%. Bezos is a deep state stooge. His grandpa worked for DARPA, and the startup money for Amazon was given through another CIA front company similar to Incutel, right?
Oh no! I read on AI. It was from his parents, and they saved their money. It was like,
and he started it in his garage. The same stupid story. He started it in his garage.
There's a funny meme. It's like, I started it in my garage, and then it shows you a picture of the garage, and it looks like a luxury mansion garage with like Lambos in it.
There's a giant warehouse full of toys.
Yeah.
No, I think the thing that'll be interesting to see as these markets, like you said, I think there's going to be a shift back towards what's real. And this is why I think it's a good time to be investing in anything that can't be printed, basically, or companies that produce those things, because I think there's just a wave that kind of emanates from the distortions of the constant inflation and what it does to people, what does the economy, what does the culture and society and all these things. And I think if you I'm not one of the Bitcoin types that says Bitcoin fixes this. That's not my view at all. But if you do fix the money, it does flow into
correct
other aspects of the culture and of the society. And I think that's something that needs to happen if we want to get our act together. I'm not sure I agree 100% on the central bank thing. Like, we do need some sort of tie to the physical. I think if you go back and look at the central bank model, where you had the 12 different regional Federal Reserve banks and they set regional interest rates, I think that would be something that could help avoid this situation we have now, where you have like the East and the West Coast that have basically created a situation where like they have kind of hollowed out the center of the country. So I think if you had regional interest rates, that might be something to help avoid the situation we're in now, where it's like, okay, we've got Fartcoin and the like scooter rideshare bullshit apps, but people can't get capital start businesses, like real physical goods and products businesses in certain parts of the country, right? So I think it's a complicated conversation, but the money does need to have some tie back to the physical at some level. Otherwise, you end up where we are today.
Well, the problem with Uber, it didn't make any money. It's another company that was just a pass-through for funds. Fortunately, some people made money driving, but I think what we need to move away from is this fee-based economy. That's what these bankers are making their money on. They don't win or lose, they collect money on fees. And, that doesn't give any incentive for profit. It just gives incentive for transaction. It's one amongst many problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well said. Ben, thank you so much for being on. We got to have you on again, man. If you want to come back next week and get into the second part of this, because there's a lot we can talk about, a lot that can be covered here. I'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, definitely. I'll come on and rant anytime you'll have me. So
love it,
we
bro.
can get into a bunch of different topics, but I think there's a lot of stuff going on that is definitely hard to cover in just 1 hour. So
absolutely. And with that being said, folks, we are at the end of the show. Cowboy, take it away, my man.